Hello, everybody. This is Ragini Anand on 18th of May 2021. I speak to you from a very changeable London scene weather-wise. Just about 10 minutes ago, we had hailstone and a complete and utter downpour for about 1 hour, and now the sun is coming out. So that's the scene here. Our evenings are getting longer, which is beautiful, so the sun doesn't set till way something like 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. So that's lovely. And what is also lovely is that this week London opened up to level 3, meaning that restaurants could take customers inside. Hotels have suddenly started to work, and I can hear many more planes coming in to Heathrow, which is not far from where we live, which are all good signs. And all the shops and pubs and everything and gyms are open. We're still not able to travel as much as we would like, but we are able to go to Portugal and also Iceland, believe it or not, and Gibraltar, which is a tiny little island. And I think if we added 10 more cars to that island, you would have a permanent traffic jam. So that really doesn't count, does it? I know that elsewhere there are still, difficulties around the world. We are certainly not over this pandemic yet. However, I like to think that I could continue to give you an update on our Tuesday programs that things are shifting. And if it's shifting here, then I'm hoping that suit then follows elsewhere in the world. So wherever you are, I'm bringing you a little bit of positivity today from London, and hoping that will be mirrored wherever you may be. So today is our first in the two-part series of friends and family from the perspective of Vedic culture. And we know that we are discussing 8 topics in the Wheel of Life segments, where friends and family was selected as the 7th segment for discussion for our podcasts. So today is the first in that series. I have to say there is so much to draw from in the Vedic culture, but I found that I had most to draw from my own life, having lived in my early life and sporadically in the Vedic culture, and then moving on into the Western way of living. So I can really draw from both and see where the differences lie, really, in terms of how friends and family, and really what we're talking about is relationships, the sort of the inner core relationships is what we term friends and family. So it's really something that where the rubber hits the road. This is our first contact point between our being, both our inner space and the outer space that we project. The first place where it kind of shows up is in family situations, where we are not able to hide very easily our deficiencies and our incompletions and our difficulties. And if it's not resolved in that family environment, then it seeps into the friends environment and then onwards. So it's a very core subject, and it doesn't take a lot of observing power to conclude that the Vedic culture emphasizes the importance of friends and family. For those of you who have had any friends or connections with, the Indian communities, you will know that they take their family extremely seriously and their friends. So let's look at first this whole concept of family, our first touch point. This is the place where we show up most, and show up not just our good points, but also our difficult points. All the incompletions show up when we interact with our family. Now, if one wants to look at the most idealistic happening to demonstrate the best versions or the best version of family, then it has to be depicted perfectly in the epic called Ramayana. Now, in that story, the Vedic culture draws very heavily on what it is to be a father, what it is to be a mother, what it is to be a stepmother. How do the relationships work within stepbrothers and sisters and other siblings? How does the brothers, what should the relationship be like with brothers? What about husband? What is your role as a husband? What is your role as a wife? All of the best emulation, role modeling type of scenarios can be found in the epic called Ramayana. Now, the Ramayana tales are told to youngsters at a very young age. It would be very unusual family, and as the kind of the Indian culture shifts, moving more towards the progressive culture, it's not so true that Ramayana would be told to a child at a very young age. Maybe at the age of 5, 6, they will start hearing about these stories. Now it's probably not so. And by not allowing or not passing that story on to your family at a young age, your children at a young age, really does then mean that blind spots develop in a human character as to what to role model, what to accept or expect as the best version of role modeling that can happen. So I was very, very fortunate that I did have instilled Ramayana in my bloodstream at a young age. But that's not to say that I swayed away from the teachings or the premises of Ramayana. I did, because I got engulfed in the progressive culture. So I rejected all things Vedic for a long while. And now, as COVID comes and goes, and our systems begin to fail, I go back to those old kind of ideas of how to relate. So let's look at what the family nucleus emulates mainly in a Vedic culture. I see it as very much a matriarchal society. So the woman of the house is revered. Now, why is she revered? She is revered because the goddess is revered in the Vedic culture. It kind of echoes. Okay? The goddesses in the Vedic culture take the ultimate position, the highest position. the paramount position. So what you are taught at a very young age, that what even Shiva, Lord of everything, couldn't put right as the Lord of the universe, his wife, when she becomes Kali or Durga, is able to put wrongs right. So when everything fails in the world, and when the mother becomes the most active and most ferocious, when her children are not behaving in a way that they can share things equally and to live in harmony, she becomes this kind of a fierce, ferocious mother that wants to teach her children and put things right so that it's good for the all, not just good for the few. So mother is seen as the sort of the harmony, but when that harmony is disturbed, she becomes ferocious. So with that idea embedded in the psyche of the Vedic culture, then it's not difficult to see why the mother, the eldest mother, so let's say in a family unit, if the grandmother is alive, then she is the head of the family. If the great grandmother is alive, she is the head of the family. When she passes, the grandmother becomes the head, and when she passes, the mother becomes the head. So, what do we mean by becoming the head? Now, in every Indian household, which tends to be a big household in that it's a many families living together, but the keys of all the cupboards and the safekeeping, the keys are always held by the head of the family, which is usually the grandmother. So the keys to the safe, the keys to the larder, the keys to all the finery that the family may hold, all of that is held by the head of the family, and the keys are at the hip of the of her sari. And I remember always having to go to my mother when I lived in Africa, and I would say, Mom, give me the keys. And the keys to the larder would, even the larder keys were on her keychain. And if she approved, she would let you have them. And then I could go and raid the box of Smarties or the box of Quality Street. But without her permission, I was not allowed. And similarly, the vaults, if you had jewelry or whatever, that would be held by the mother. But not just that, she would be involved in the decision making at the highest level. So when it came to businesses, she would be consulted. When it came to marriages, she would be consulted. And the mother, or the female, is always seen as Lakshmi. Lakshmi meaning your goal and your wealth. Okay, so there is this tradition in the Vedic culture, is that we always say that when a daughter is born in the family, we believe that she is Lakshmi, and Lakshmi always brings luck, gold, wealth, health, all the things we discussed in the previous module around wealth. A female child brings that with her, okay? Or a wife brings wealth consciousness into the family. So the woman of the family, whether she is birthed or married, is seen as Lakshmi and is celebrated as Lakshmi in many ways. Now here I want to give you a real live example. When I was born to my mother and father in Africa in 1958, my parents didn't have a lot of money. Okay, my father didn't come from a very wealthy background. My mother did, however, so she was very much, the Lakshmi of my father's life. But when I was born, my father said, his luck just multiplied. So he always saw me as the Lakshmi, the bearer of wealth in the family, that I brought that luck with me. And when I left the home, when I went to university and then never came back at the age of, I think, 17, 18, I must have left. My father did start to see huge declines in his wealth. So he always, till his dying day, kind of saw me as the wealth bearer, the Lakshmi of the house. And I didn't think much of that, but now as I get older, and go towards Vedic culture, I can understand what the science of that is, and what is the culture of it, and what's the celebration of the feminine, and what it brings and what it means. Now, with that celebration of Lakshmi, a man always reveres a woman like a mother. In not always, but in the true sense of the Vedic culture, if it was practiced, that's how it would be. So, at Diwali, a woman would be given lots of gold, or when she is married, a dowry of gold would be given. It's like saying, if the goddess Lakshmi was really on the earth plane, how would we celebrate her? How would we revere her? With that same reverence, a woman is celebrated. So when I grew up in the West, and people used to say, oh, the Hindu culture is so terrible to women, I never understood it, because that was not my experience. My experience was quite the opposite, in that, not only did a man celebrate his wife and his daughters as Lakshmi, he worked all his life to hand over whatever he earned to put at the feet of the woman, and made sure that she was always decked out well, that there was always provisions made for a large wedding. There was always provisions made for a big dowry to look after a daughter's well-being once she has left the home. I was given dowry, which, my father needn't have done that, because I didn't remain in that culture. I married outside of that culture, but I was still given it. I was still revered as a kind of a goddess. So it's very interesting what perspectives are held outside of the culture as to what the culture truly is. Now, also, the division of labor is very clearly defined in the Vedic family, in that this feministic idea hasn't crept, it has crept in now, but if you were to look only at the beginning of my life, 50 years ago, 60 years ago, the division of labor was, the man went to work, usually, and focused solely on bringing in money, and the woman stayed at home, and it was her job to instill values into the child and the family, and make sure that the home life was running, in a very good way. Because remember, it was usually a joint family, so it was quite large sometimes, the family units. And it would take a lot of work for the woman of the family to, get up in the morning, make all the food and breakfast, for 8, 9, 10, maybe more people. Make sure all the clothes were ironed, and, everything was just right, and the right food was brought in, and the right care and medicine and upkeep of the family was looked after. So that division of labor was there, and I have to say that we've lost a lot through men becoming women and women becoming men. As I see how we all go to work now, we all cook, we all take care of the children, we all, And that division, that kind of lack of division, has created its own problems that we are all facing, in the way society is beginning to break down. So if we look at the matriarchal society, maybe we need to draw from some of that now and bring some of that goodness back into our family units. So that's one aspect of family, okay, a matriarchal society. Now, the other aspect is a reverence for ancestors. So, there isn't this belief that once your ancestors are dead, that's it, they've kind of, they were here 1 minute, they've gone, and that's the end of it. Because the culture believes in life after death, whatever shape that life may take, of course, the material dies, but the spiritual is seen not to die. It ascends, it circulates, it changes, it's still connected to you, and it's your lineage. It reverberates in your DNA, and it's very important to the Vedic culture to continue the connection with the ancestors and to please them even though they're out of sight. So a lot of work is done in keeping the ancestors fed in a way, because the connection, although not seen, is definitely there. And if their lineage is not succeeding, they're not succeeding. So there is this idea of each lineage is seen to compete in some ways for succession. So in the Vedic culture, you come from one of 7 gotras. Gotras are lineages. Lineages started with 7 sages. That's the story. That I come from a gotra, which is directly connected to a sage, one of the 7, that was taught by Shiva himself, and that sage was called Kashyap. So I know it sounds like wacky races, but if you ever go to an Indian temple, you are asked by the priest, what is your gotra? Gotra is your lineage, and I would have to say, I am Kashyap Gotra. My star of birth is Vishaka, and my Rasi, or my one of the houses into which I was born, the what are they called, astrological houses, is Tula or Libra, okay, in the Indian tradition. In the Western tradition, I'm Taurus, but in the Indian tradition, I'm Libra. So those 3 things, those 3 identifiers would allow a priest to kind of chant the mantras that would reverberate in my DNA, because it's believed that if you come from the Kashyapa Gotra, okay, then that whole lineage, the whole learning, the Akashic records, everything of that lineage is held in the DNA, and it only needs certain mantras to be recited to have them, activate that lineage power in you. So I know that sounds like a that sounds like a, all again a very strange science, but that's the belief system, and we're talking about the Vedic culture here. So the ancestors are revered through the lineage, the gotra, but also through tarpanam remedies to appease them, because it's only on the earth plane and through conscious body and conscious abilities can you do certain rituals to free up uh, your lineage, which your ancestors' souls, which could be maybe stuck somewhere, or are still incomplete in some ways, and that's having a reflection in your life as well. So, for example, if your great 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 grandfather was involved in some kind of a dispute with somebody, and that led to a, I don't know, um, misuse of his power, whereby something happened to somebody, and that somebody is still holding that soul back, then it will have an impact on you, and you will feel like you're in a sort of a, things keep repeating in your life, but you have no idea why it's repeating. And you may keep having accidents, or you may keep having certain illnesses. Well, that's the way the ancestors are speaking to you, saying, please do a ritual for me, please think about me, please help me um, cure that karma so that I can move on. So a lot of tarpanam remedies would be a part of the family unit. Okay. um, and this sort of family honor that I spoke of very quickly is also very important, that the Indians aren't very competitive on the earth plane, but they're very competitive on the vertical time zones, punya as they call it, the ability to transcend um, dimensions of life is very important to the Indian culture, the Vedic culture. The family honor, the family must not be dishonored by uh, anybody in the family, because if they are, then it means that the whole lineage is brought down, not just one person or one family. The whole lineage has an impact. And that's done in many ways, kept alive in many ways, in that they only marry in certain groups and certain social structures to keep that honor going. There's a whole load of societal um, do's and don'ts that allow that family honor to be such that it can help the lineage ascend. And that's a whole topic on its own. I'm not going to go into that at the moment, but enough to say that it's a collectivistic culture, in that the social rules are promoted to be selflessness. Okay, so the family honor is far greater than selfish ideas, because the family works in a way to work as a group, and it does what is best for its lineage, its society, rather than for itself. Okay, so it's always gearing its thinking on how can I take my lineage up, so that we all tides lift all boats in the family, rather than people let you down. And families and communities have a central role. Families have a central role in the community that they live in, because if they vibrate with powerfulness and completion, they haven't got problems with each other. I mean, now we see brothers fighting with brothers, and over a piece of land and this and that. That would all be seen as negative in the honor of in the true sense of the Vedic culture. That would be seen as letting the sides down. So there is this wonderful, sweet community that existed before lots of invasions happened in India. For whatever reason, there was a very sweet ecosystem that used to exist, whereby lineages competed in a nice way to keep their lineages traveling upwards rather than on a horizontal time frame, gaining more and more material gains. It was designed to seek cosmic wealth, okay, or cosmic rewards, if you like, whereby you would be showered with good name and fame and wealth and a status in community to be seen as, sort of the powerhouse for the community. So that family honor is a very important thing. Now, the other misnomer and a perception that's out there, and I have been at the brunt of this, oh, Indians are so steeped in caste system. That's the thing that I got at the age of 9 when I moved to America, and I was thinking, caste system, what are they going on about? And then as I grew older, I realized that there was an even deeper caste system here in the UK, but nobody spoke about it. And then when I digged even deeper, I realized that the caste system was really imposed as an idea by the invaders, and of course there was untouchability, but what are we doing today? Social distancing because of labor and keeping certain health systems in place. We socially distance. That's the same as untouchability. And it wasn't for the reasons that a caste system was shown to be by the invaders. They said the caste system existed in a way that people couldn't actually move from one caste to another. That was an absolute lie, because even in my own life, I have seen jati and varna actually exist. So, by merit, you can go from being a kshatriya to a brahmana if you wanted to. There is no impositions. There's no Vedic law that stops you from doing that. However, there were the most horrendous crimes done to humanity in India by the invaders when they brought the Criminal Act of the 1871, where communities were by birth seen as being criminals. And there were 400 tribes that had this as a problem. So with that law, then the whole caste system thing became kind of solidified. But if you look at the Vedic culture, there is both jati, which is caste, but also varna, which is merit. Okay, so with merit, you can move up and down the caste system. And there are many, many examples of that in the culture. So I'm not going to pour that out now, but that's the kind of the family unit idea of the Vedic culture. It's very matriarchal. It's about family honor. It has something to do with your lineage, going up to your ancestors and beyond. And it has something to do with, caste and varna, and then social systems are designed around all of that. So I come from a particular place in Gujarat where there was a social system set up by communities where 6 villages always married their girls off to each other. It was designed to keep this kind of idea intact and working so that there was the least amount of friction felt. And even now, if you look at the Gujarati community, there's not as much divorce rate, not as much, problems that, comparably with other communities elsewhere, because the concept is if your family life is broken, nothing else can build on top of it. You're no good for work, you're no good for other friendships, you're no good for anything, no good for yourself. you start falling apart. So preserving the family is an important element. And I must say I have swayed away from that and had many, many wounds as a result of that, which I can go into. But enough to say here that I think redressing the balance and making family your important um, core and the center will then just allow you to progress into other areas of your life more easily, and that requires um, addressing very urgently. And I think COVID has helped us do that, in that families are having to live together in confined space and having to compete with each other where there are problems. And if they don't, then those families are falling apart. And here in the UK, the sort of divorce rate has gone up even more since COVID and lockdown, and wife beating and family disharmony has increased for the reasons just outlined. That the unity is not seen as the most important um, leg of our society, because independence is so revered over everything else that we've kind of lost a lot by giving up, um, this sacrificial type of the consciousness-based model of living. It's not for everybody, but I think we're being forced into that now. So all these talks are very timely, and I'm glad that we're recording them, because time will show that we will all have to move towards these models of being and living as we move along. So that was family. Now let me talk to you about friends. I said that Ramayana probably posed the best kind of concepts, or best core values for the Vedic culture when it came to emulating family units. If you're looking for friend unit, stories in the Vedic culture from which you can draw your ideas or concepts of friendship, then there is a Krishna story. It's called Krishna and Sudama. Sudama was Krishna's childhood friend. It's a long story. I'm not going to go into it, but you can do your own research. It's a very sweet, endearing, lovely story with cascading levels of understanding that one can draw from it if you read it with the right eyes. Beautiful story of friendship. And then we've already talked about Duryodhan and Karna in our earlier talks in the Mahabharata, where the baddie Duryodhan becomes a lifelong friend with Karna, who happens to be a brother from the other side, who has been forgotten for many reasons. So it's a very interesting story of friendship as well. But I'll let you research those two stories as kind of the models of friendships that one can glean from the Vedic culture. But let me tell you what I summarized for this talk as being the sort of the critical difference between the progressive culture and the Vedic culture when it comes to friendship. Now, if you were to draw on a piece of paper two sides, on the left-hand side, I'm going to put the progressive culture model, and on the right-hand side, I'm going to put the Vedic culture model of friendships. And on the left-hand side, it's very opinion-based. Friendships are opinion-based and conversion-based. You're trying to convert people to your ways of thinking. If they don't convert to your ways of thinking, you find it very hard to be their friend. So friends are in pockets. They become gangs of, that you see in schools, where they then start threatening in crowds and out crowds, and lobby your friendship through conversion and opinions on how you look and how you dress, and the materials you have as your, opinions and materials that you possess are all important in that way of working as a friend. And I think we will have all been here. And, but this kind of friendship is very exploiting. It exploits the weaker parts of the community that cannot belong in, in certain groups. And it's all about getting something. Okay, so of course you're going to have joy from friendship. For a few minutes you may think, I belong in this gang, and look how great I look, and I can wear these types of clothes and have these kinds of hairstyle and these kinds of bags. So you have joy, but then very soon that drops into sorrow. That joy fades, and then you have to go and get something else. So it becomes a greed and fear based model of friendships. Okay, and social media is rife with this model of friendships. Okay, if you like somebody, it's like, tick tick tick. If you don't like somebody, if you don't like their opinion, it's, let's just bully them on on in public. So you create this fear and greed cycle that you exploit for momentary joy that turns into sorrow. Then you have momentary joy, and it keeps going like this. And it saps you of your power. You feel powerless in this model. And anybody who's lived through social media at this, in the last decade, will know what that feels like. It's a lottery. Your friendship is a lottery. It makes you feel powerless and violent, and you create a lot of incompletions. You harbor things that you hold inside that you haven't really shared with your friend. So that's what I call the progressive model of friendships. Now, the Vedic model of friendship that we glean through the old stories, and even through, looking at old ladies and old families. My mother's family, for instance, I can tell you that they were excellence-based model of friendship, and a sort of a sacrificial model of friendship, where you were always giving and enriching by a little bit of selflessness, with the idea of transforming a person and their quality of life. And in this model, it's like consciousness based. You're very conscious of somebody's feelings. In spite of your feelings, you may just do the right thing to just move them along this sort of honor that we talked about, friendship honor going upwards. Yeah, so it's an enriching model. You give something of yours up in order to be a true friend come darkness or sunshine. There's no fair weather friends in this model. And you're always in bliss. There's no incompletions. There's no harboring of bad feelings. Things are resolved very quickly. And a friendship makes you feel powerful. rather than saps you and makes you feel powerless, and you're, when you're alone in your bed, you're not thinking, oh my God, what did she say that for, and why has she run off with a better bag, and why is she, looking at my husband in that way, and all that kind of stuff that brings incompletion that you harbor. None of that exists. You're powerful and you're non-violent. You never have ill feeling for your friend. And there's this certainty that you're always going to be a friend, come hell or shine. You're always in this, what I call no death state. Your friendship's never going to die, from which you experience this immortal state of being. And manifesting things is easy. You can say, let's go and do this, and there's no dragging of the feet. You just go and do it. You do something for one person one day and they do something for you. It's a very excellence-based model, sacrificial-based model of friendship. And if only we can, try and emulate this transformational consciousness-based friendship model, and maybe engineer our social media platforms that are based on that, rather than the artificial intelligence of who liked what opinion, what conversion, what material gain can we have from that, success-based model of exploiting. So I came up with this kind of conclusion that this was the main difference for you to kind of, internalize. It may not all seem accurate to you, but if you were to read the Vedic culture and the Puranas and the text where friendship is emulated, then I would say that what I've said is not inaccurate, that is exactly what they were alluding to. So that's what I wanted to say. Now, in terms of where do you go for friendship and family related problems, if you want to do some mantras or go to a deity of the Vedic culture, my absolute two places where I would go is Shiva consciousness, Krishna consciousness, and Durga consciousness. I would want to emulate those deities and bring their help into my consciousness to try and fix those problems. So I would say Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. Please, Shiva, give me the intelligence to take the family honor up, so that I can be great and I can take my lineage up. I can make my DNA expand, my ability to evolve expand, my consciousness to expand. That's all Shiva's realm. Now, Krishna being the all-encompassing remedy for everything, he is the complete avatar. So Om Klim Krishnaya Namaha, Om Klim Krishnaya Namaha. Or you can do the Rama and Krishna, mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Now these mantras, I know we've heard them, and perceptions are out there to laugh at all those that sing, through the Hare Krishna movement. However, they're very profound because they balance the left and the right hemisphere in our body in ways that we still don't understand. And when those harmonize, the left and right hand sides of our brain, then we begin to to become mature in the ways in which we look at relationships and friendships and family and lineage and all of that. And of course, whenever you're in trouble, where do you go? You go to your mother, don't you? You go to your mother first and you say, Om Dum Durgaya Namaha. Durga, please take all this negativity away from my inner space, whereby I can relax and be free of all the negative thoughts that run around me all day long, which are just killing every moment. Because I'm stuck in the past, thinking about things that happened in the past, in the relationship, that I'm not able to enjoy this moment, and my future is shaped by this moment. Please help me remove those negativities. So Om Klim Parvatiyai Namaha or Om Dum Durgaya Namaha. If you consciously sit with these mantras with the wish to change your life, they will work for you. Most definitely, those deities are there, ready to help you. But you have to believe that they're there, ready to help you. That's problem number one. But once you've got over that, then they're there to help you. And that's how I have worked through my difficult, moments. And hopefully that helps somebody. But that's all I have to say this week about this. We'll take it to another level next week. If you have any questions, I'd like to take them now. You can either unmute yourself and talk to me directly or post them as you do in the event questions section. So, is there any today? Let's see. Ash around Dagidab. To listen to the recording, I don't have a headset and cannot hear well enough. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Yes, we will have a recording and you can listen to it then. Floor 19 saying, beautiful session. Thank you as always. I have learned so much with you. I'm very grateful. Thank you for being there, because I don't know who's listening, but it's nice to have somebody listening. And hopefully this, they're recorded in history. They become our sort of Akashic records, and we can see as we go along how some of the words, which they're not my words, I always feel these words come from somewhere. I don't know where, but they're not always mine. And it's nice that you feel that it's helping you, in which case you must resonate with, put into practice whatever it is that you're feeling is helping you. Practice is absolutely the essential step, because otherwise we're going to be in listening mode. So coming back and sharing, have you put something into practice and how it has helped you, would be such a nice thing for me to feel fulfilled. So that's a request, but thank you. Lightsen is saying, I love all that you do and these sessions. Thank you for the mantra. It's beautiful. How many times a day do we have to chant it? Mantras, the magic formula for mantras is 108 times. 108 is a divine number. Do your research on 108. There are so many videos out there on 108. And it seems to be the magical number. Now, maybe you can't do 108. I normally chant my mantras when I'm walking. I used to, in my early days, have a clicker, one of those digital, it was analog, but you clicked it and it recorded the numbers of chants you were doing. So you didn't have to keep a count, or you can have a mala and then, you use that. However, when you're walking, it's a nice time. I normally, what I do is I'll say, okay, well, today's Tuesday, so it's Murugan's day, so I would do Om Murgaya Namah, Om Murgaya Namah, 108 times. I would think about what Murugan consciousness means, what negativity I have to remove. Um, then I would do Om Mangalaya Namaha, which is Tuesday. So I would bring in the energy of the day and the planet Mars, which is it's the day off. And then I would go into specific areas that I'm working on, whether it's relationship, then it will be Om Dum Durgaya Namaha. So I will in the morning have a kind of an objective for the day. And that's a good practice to get into. Say, what am I trying to solve today? Let this day not be wasted. Let me do one small thing today. So if you're working on a relationship, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Dum Durgaya Namaha, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Whichever one you choose, just do it with absolute emotion and knowing that it's helping you. That's the only way it's really going to work. So when you're walking, it's a good way to do it. Um, so yes, please do it. And Floor 19 is saying that that's so true. We'll do that. Thank you, needed that. Yes, practice, please. Light Sun saying, I have prayer beads. I could use that. Yes, prayer beads will be fantastic for these. Then you keep all the energy of your mantras in those beads, and then, it becomes an anchor for you. And it becomes a beautiful object that you can revere. And Care Bear is saying, thank you, many blessings. Thank you for listening. Is there anybody else who would like to unmute and talk or ask? If not, then next week we've got the second part of this, and then we've got one last topic, which will be careers, which we will do as two parts at the end, and then I will have covered all 8 segments that I wanted to, and we will have done it together for a third of a year. Isn't that amazing? We've actually spent a third of a year together in when we finish our third topic, podcast. So that's amazing. One step at a time, you can definitely ascend Mount Everest. So, so thank you for that. And I wish you a wonderful day wherever you are. And I'll see you next week.